DJ Scream, heavy in the streets.
We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood. We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood.
Hood rich.
Get it out the mud.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And welcome back. Welcome back. We have some more appetizers for you this evening. Some appetizers, and that's two weeks in a row that we've had some appetizers for you during the week. And I'm talking about UFC 325 Volkanovski versus Lopes 2, and that's Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes, and that's the featherweight champion there. And this event happened. It's a UFC event, happened February 1st, 2026, but that was February 1st, the first day of February out in Australia. But when it aired in the US, it was still Saturday, the 31st of January. But yeah, there was obviously some confusion with that because the start time was the same. Even though the start time was the same, it's still like they're like not a full days apart, but due to time zones and things, it caused some confusion. So it felt like they were having the card like on Sunday. It was already Sunday by the time it was over. But anyway, so that's enough of the time zone issues. But this was on the venue, Kudos Bank Arena, and that was Sydney, Australia, and they had 18,102. And the gate was 10.1 million. So it seems like they had a pretty decent attendance and gate there in Australia. Definitely got a good following there. And then, of course, because they have some champions that are Australian as well. But so let's see here. Before we get into this card too much, I just want to mention the Paramount. So the Paramount, that's something that seems to have kind of ruffled some feathers or caused some confusion, or just more than anything, people just trying to get used to going from ESPN to Paramount, pay-per-views to monthly subscription. And so people complain quite a bit, because now they're down to only paying like $9 a month, but you had people complaining about all the commercials on UFC 324 because they're not having to pay $80 for a pay-per-view anymore. But yeah, that on UFC 324, it seemed like they kind of cut out like the walk-in entrances with the music, and then the cut man's getting them all greased up, ready for the fight, and then in between rounds, you didn't get to hear as much of the communication in between rounds with the fighter and their cornermen because of that. Which I think Paramount, I think I mean, I don't think they completely like cleaned it up or anything. There's still commercials and stuff, but I think they picked better timing for them, and there weren't quite as many. But my only complaint still with Paramount, and this has to do still with the commercials, is that half of the commercials they showed, they just didn't. It wasn't a commercial at all. It was just a screensaver with just some upbeat music kind of playing. So but me as someone that's done a lot of streaming over the years and lots of sports and lots of shows, I'd rather watch a commercial than a screensaver that just repeats the same thing over and over, and you're staring at that for like five minutes. Like I'd rather watch commercials than that. So Paramount, they did a little bit better in cutting down the commercials and spacing them out a little bit more, but I'm not a huge fan of this screensaver commercial thing that they did. Like I said, I'd rather watch a commercial, a Gatorade commercial or something than that. But besides that, I don't have really any issues with Paramount. You know, the main one that really you can't argue with, and no one can complain too much about. It's just the pay-per-views. You're not having to pay out of pocket at $80 every month for that. But now my question is, what will the fight night next week look like? Will there be like twice as many commercials, or they're gonna cut out all the walk-ins and all the corner interactions? So it'd be kind of interesting to see what the fight night ends up being after that. But anyway, so that's enough of the Paramount and the streaming service that UFC 325 is on. Let's actually get into this card now a little bit. So, can I get a menu? And so the first thing I want to just kind of talk a little bit about the prelims and stuff. So that's what made UFC 324 better. Probably just the prelims were better. Is what made it kind of a better-ish card. Just the undercard what was better. Just because there was more name recognition, and then there were still quite a few exciting finishes on the prelims. Just not as big a names, and not as much name recognition. But you still got your some TKOs and some submissions. You know, I think we originally mentioned some of the top three fights having some guys that had some kind of uh, uh, re- recognizable names, you know, that we recognize. But one of the worst fights on that card was the third from the main event on the prelims, third fight, and that was a middleweight bout between Jacob Malkoun versus Torres Finney. And man, that was a terrible fight. That was literally just Torres Finney like looking like he was hardly able to stand half the time, and then just Jacob Malkoun just like laying on top of him for like the full 15 minutes of the fight. And I think Torres Finney, like towards the end of the first round, I think you saw that he might have like torn his Achilles, because you saw like a big jolt in his calf muscle on one of the highlights of them showing where they thought he hurt his leg. So you had Torres Finney fighting like two rounds, or just laying on his back and just slumped over for 2 rounds with like a torn Achilles, and then they were like carrying him, helping him, assisting him out of the cage at the end of the fight. So that was not great. That didn't help the prelims at all. And then some fighters that have name recognition ended up getting taken to the woodshed by some of these guys on the co-main event and the main event of the prelims. But you had Cameron Roston defeating Cody Brundage by TKO punches at the 4:08 mark of the second round. So didn't expect that. And then on the main event of the standard prelims, you had a lightweight bout between Billy Alacana defeated Junior Taffa with submission rear naked choke at the 3:18 mark of the second round. So didn't see that coming. So there were some surprises, but there was also some really bad fights on the prelims. That Torres Finney fight was no good. But so yeah, that alone kind of helped UFC 324 have better watch value, I guess, than 325. But the thing is, I feel that the main card of UFC 325 was better than 324. So they kind of balances them out a little bit. But most people would probably be saying that UFC 325 was better than 324, because you know a lot of those people don't. I only watch the main card, so they're just grading it off of that. But let's get into it. And my picks were a little bit better, so that helped be a little more enjoyable watching. But let's get into those picks, because we didn't make picks on the prelims, but we did on the main card. So let's get into it. So the first fight on the card, the main card, is a lightweight bout between Quinlan Skillkill versus Jamie Malarkey. And I originally predicted this because you'd seen quite a bit of it from Quinlan Skillkill. You know, was on a heater, had won several fights in a row, and had won like his first 4 fights in the UFC, and at least 2 of them had been by knockout. And then Jamie Malarkey had lost like what, three of his last five fights, and I think that maybe two or three of the fights that he'd lost were by knockout. So I predicted Quinlan Skinkill to win this fight by knockout over Jamie Malarkey. And Jamie Malarkey, at the beginning of the fight, through the first 2.5 minutes or so, looked pretty good. You know, he was defending himself well. You know, he was landing a couple shots himself, and was even kind of going for some kind of half-hearted takedowns, and was able to defend any of the takedowns that Quinlan Skillkill sent his way. And you got the classic announcer jinx on Jamie Malarkey there, like right as you're kind of getting that sense that maybe Jamie Malarkey kind of deserved to be in the same ring as Quinlan Skillkill. One of the announcers just mentioned how it looked like he was doing good, like he was holding his own, and he was defending the takedowns, and then he got caught with a couple punches, and that kind of got him rocked. And then the next thing you know, Quinlan Skillkill's on Jamie Malarkey's back, and Jamie Malarkey, I gotta admit, he didn't do a great job like fighting the hands of Quinlan Skillkill. And it says submission neck crank on here for the method at the 302 mark of the first round, but at times it looked like a neck and a face crank, but at the very end it looked like he'd repositioned it to just make it into a full-blown rear naked choke. And like I said, it says submission here, but I don't. From my memory of watching that fight, I thought Jamie Malarkey, he went out, he went to sleep, and because I remember Quinlan Slillkill, when he got up, got up and kind of like pushed him off of him a little bit because he was asleep, you know. So a little confusing on the descriptions of the method here, but yeah. So we got the stoppage that we were expecting from Quinlan Skillkill, because I think he was like a 12 plus 1200 or a minus 1200 favorite over Jamie Larkey. So he was the hands down biggest favorite on this card, and Jamie Larkey the biggest underdog. But yeah, but we still got the stoppage, and we got the pick right, but not necessarily the method. But that was a good way to start off the card. You get to see someone get put to sleep with a neck crank. All right. So now then, on to the second fight on the card. We have had the heavyweight bout between Taliesin Teixeira versus Taya Tuivasa. And this right here is kind of should be like an example of like what a heavyweight fight can be. It can either be like a great fight where a guy gets his head knocked off, or he gets his arm or his leg broken off, or you get like you know, um, in the runnings for the year, like some of the worst fights you're going to get. Because a lot of times, if they don't get their head knocked off in the first round, or don't get their arm or their leg broken off in the first round, then a lot of the time you're in for a long night watching some of these bad fights. But yeah, that's what we ended up getting in this fight. Taliesin Teixeira ended up defeating Taya Tuivasa by decision, 29-28, 29-28, 29-28. And that's all 5 rounds, 3 rounds for 15 minutes. And Taliesin Teixeira, I thought he looked decent at like the first minute or two of this fight, where he was throwing some kicks and swinging some wild punches, and just missing probably some knockout shots in return from Taya Tuivasa. And then like I said, after the first round or so, it looked okay. And then coming into the second round, Taliesin Teixeira just looked like he was completely gassed, and he was lucky to be able to either have Taya Tuivasa clinching up with him, which like saved him several times in regards to him being able to catch his breath and just not having to stand in front of Taya Tuivasa while he's throwing some punches. And then Taliesin Teixeira a couple times was able to take Taliesin Teixeira was able to take Taya Tuivasa down and just hold him down. Didn't really do anything, and just was able to hold him down and kind of lay on him. And then the few times that Taya Tuivasa was able to get back up later in that second round and in that third round, I think, yeah, the third. So they had this unanimous decision, but it's 29-28 across the board. Probably had Tai Tuivasa winning the third round because Taliesin Teixeira was literally when they were standing up in front of Tai Tuivasa, he literally just had like his arms like laying down to the side, and he was like at times like turning his back to Tai Tuivasa. Like I thought I was going to be wrong on just the pick for Taliesin to win this because it looked like uh, just one good shot from Tai Tuivasa would have been able to knock Taliesin Teixeira out in this fight. So he got lucky in regards to that, and the fact that Tai Tuivasa is not like he's some great athlete either. In regards to this being what his fifth loss in a row in the UFC, which probably should end his career in the UFC at least. I don't know about mixed martial arts and combat sports, but me hearing his story about I don't know, is it supposed to be like a heartfelt story about how he took a year off to fall in love with the game again and to have his chin heal and all that. But yeah, that's a nice story. But also hearing that he blew up to like 330 pounds. And remember, the heavyweight weight limit's 265, so he just blew up, and like that helped at all with your being a pro athlete. You know, gaining all that weight and then having to cut it, that just was like wrecks your stamina. So Taliesin Teixeira, he's still only what 26, 27 years old. So yeah, it's not surprising to see a 6'7", 6'8", 265-pound guy like that young fighter look that bad. But for Tai Tuivasa, I think I've seen enough. At least I've seen enough of him in the UFC at least. But so those are your first two fights, and hey, started 2-0 to start the card, so that's nice. But didn't get any of those methods yet, just yet. So now then, on to the third fight on the card. We have a lightweight bout between Mauricio Ruffi versus Rafael Fiziev, and this kind of just like how it just highlighted on the previous fight, kind of highlighted of like what's your potential that you're getting from a heavyweight bout. You know, either it's going to be something awesome where someone gets hurt real bad, or it's going to be almost unbearable to get through it. Well, this fight, this Mauricio Ruffi versus Rafael Fiziev fight, is kind of what your definition of MMA math and how MMA math doesn't always add up. Usually doesn't add up, and that's because Rafael Fiziev, who looked, great in his two fights, two fights, one coming down to a split decision, then going all 10 rounds with Justin Gaethje, who's your current uh, interim lightweight champion. So I'm thinking Rafael Fiziev, he's going to come in here and knock Mauricio Ruffi out, Ruffi out. And then on top of that, Mauricio Ruffi had just gotten stopped by submission face crank by Benoit Saint-Denis, who's also on this card. So, just going hand in hand, think we're going to see a good fight. If nothing else, Rafael Fiziev isn't going to get stopped. I mean, that's just not something that happens to him. Didn't expect that either. So originally picked Rafael Fiziev to get a knockout, either knockout, TKO in the later rounds, maybe in the second or the third round, and got the complete opposite of that. We got Mauricio Ruffi getting back on his winning track, and he felt like before he lost to Benoit Saint-Denis, felt like maybe just one or two more real impressive wins by him could have put him in position for a title shot opportunity. But man, Rafael Fiziev, what was also funny about this is in like the first round, Rafael Fiziev looked decent. He was landing some leg kicks and throwing some head kicks and some spinning kicks, and which that's so funny that he was doing that, and that's kind of what led to him at least surviving the first round and not looking bad. Was that in the pre-fight press conference he said about Mauricio Ruffi how he hopes he doesn't keep throwing all these kicks and spinny shit, and then that's about the only offensive output and performance that you got from Rafael Fiziev because You got Mauricio Ruffy kind of slowly started kind of picking him apart a little bit in the second round, and then caught him and dropped him, and then stopped him at the 4:30 mark of the second round. So I don't know. I don't know if that's karma or what by Rafael Fiziev, but shouldn't make that joke. Maybe he was making that joke because he's the one that does all the kicks and spinny shit. Maybe I didn't catch the joke there. But yeah, so that was my first loss on on this card. So that puts me at 2-1 because I was predicting Rafael Fiziev knockout, but ended up getting Mauricio Ruffy defeated Rafael Fiziev TKO punches at the 4:30 mark of the second round. All right, so now then, on to the co-main event of UFC 325. You had a lightweight bout, possibly both of these fights, the Ruffy fight and then this fight too, could possibly be title eliminators, man, possibly the next challenger for Alexander Volkanovski. Maybe you had Benoit Saint Denis versus Dan Hooker, and I picked Benoit Saint Denis. I thought he was maybe going to do Dan Hooker kind of like he did against Mauricio Ruffy, and maybe get him down and 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 wear on him with some ground and pound, and then get him in some type of choke and submit him. And so I picked Benoit Saint Denis to win, but that's not how the fight went. It's kind of like the Quinlan Kill Jamie Malarkey fight. Like, yeah, I predicted a stoppage, I predicted a stoppage, but didn't get the submission, just like I didn't get the knockout by Quinlan. So in this fight, it looked like Dan Hooker was looking really good in the first round, and he was the one that probably won the first round because he kept landing these like straight front kicks where he was landing like the heel of his foot, like right in like the sternum and like solar plexus of Benoit Saint Denis like 3 or 4 times, and it looked like it hurt. It looked like it hurt. I imagine it did. So yeah, you had Benoit Dan Hooker looking real good for the majority of the first round, and then at the second round, towards the about the end, like the last 30 seconds of the first round, Benoit Saint Denis was able to take Dan Hooker down, and he was able to land one good elbow that like cut Dan Hooker open, and then just like that, that was enough to win to steal the round by Benoit Saint Denis, stole it from Dan Hooker, and the end of that round basically carried over into the second round because it didn't take too long before Benoit Saint Denis got a hold of Dan Hooker again in the second round and took him down. And then he was working a face crank. At first, he was working a face crank, which got me excited. I thought I was going to get my pick exactly right, the pick right with picking Benoit, but then also the method with the submission because he was working a face crank, and then he had him in a head and arm triangle choke for a long time, for like a minute or two in this round, and it looked like it was pretty tight at times, but it just didn't seem like he was keeping consistent control on it. And I don't know why he was wanting to like stay in half guard while he was doing it instead of getting like completely off to the left side of Dan Hooker when he had it in. So I was thinking I was going to get the submission there, get the whole pick and method and everything right. But then I guess Benoit Saint Denis did the smart thing in letting that go and not completely burning his arms out, and just started pounding on Dan Hooker with ground and pound and ground and pound and elbows, and just at the very end you just had Dan Hooker just like covering up like this, but he was like done, to where Benoit Saint Denis was like in his flow state and just like in on another level than him, because even though Dan Hooker at the end had his hands up here like blocking like this, he was like he was like getting Benoit Saint Denis, he was getting in like through all of the, even though he's blocking, he was getting through all of it and landing like a half a dozen shots that, even though his arms were up, he was sneaking in beside him, like hitting him in the side of the head, the temple area, and like just straight into the face and mouth area, and then got the TKO punches. So you had a lightweight bout between Benoit Saint Denis versus Dan Hooker. You got Dan Hooker, Benoit St. Denis defeated Dan Hooker with TKO punches at the 4:45 mark of the second round. So that was an impressive victory by Benoit St. Denis. Like, I mean, he's just been pretty scary recently with how he's just beating these big name guys and the fashion that he's doing it. Like, I wouldn't be upset with seeing him as possibly the next challenger for the lightweight belt. So I guess that would be, yeah, that'd be Justin Gaethje. So all right, so then on to the main event of UFC 325, Volkanovski versus Lopes 2. And so you have a featherweight championship bout between Alexander Volkanovski, the champion, versus Diego Lopes, the challenger. And this is the sequel, the sequel, or they kept saying like the revenge fight for Diego Lopes, but I didn't know there was any, like, I guess maybe just because of the loss, but never really felt that there was like any bad blood between Alexander Volkanovski and Diego Lopes. But they said that a couple times, and I don't know. I just didn't seem right because both of Alexander Volkanovski and Diego Lopes seem like both such nice guys. So I wasn't buying the whole revenge thing. More just more of a get back match. Sound like a better term to me. But it ended up being basically kind of exactly what I was predicting, that it was just kind of going to be, it's going to be round 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of basically the first fight between them. And we really kind of banged on Diego Lopes in the first fight, that he was really tentative and reluctant to throw anything in the first 3 rounds of the first fight. And and then he was actually able to rock Alexander Volkanovski a couple times in the fourth and the fifth round. Well, that this fight was a little different. Started out a little different because Diego Lopes wasn't as afraid to fire back anytime Alexander Volkanovski would throw punches at him. But the thing is, he was only reacting to anything that Alexander Volkanovski throws. Like, he wasn't initiating anything with any of the punches, but he'd always fire back with something big or maybe land a little bit. But that's definitely the difference. This was a much more impressive victory by Alexander Volkanovski in this fight because he never got rocked. Diego Lopes never landed anything significant on Alexander Volkanovski in this fight. But I have to credit Diego Lopes a little bit for not starting quite as slow in the first couple rounds, but can't say that he was very impressive. I only had him looking like he maybe won maybe the first or the second round, but that was about it. So this ended up being Alexander Volkanovski ended up defeating Diego Lopes by decision, unanimous at the 49, and the judges had it 49-46, 49-46, and then 50-44 or 50-45. So, and that was for 5-minute rounds for 25 minutes. So you see the judges only had him winning maybe one of the first 2 rounds, and then that was about it. It was just basically Alexander Volkanovski, just kind of follow my lead, Diego, because Diego Lopes wasn't initiating in any of the combat. Like, he wasn't afraid to fire back, but he wasn't the leader. He was never leading the dance in this fight. And like I said, because Alexander Volkanovski, he looks like his chin is all the way back, is 100% back for how bad he was looking there for a little while, coming off of 2 straight knockout losses, and the fact that he's 36 years old, 37 years old, and we were a little worried about maybe slowing down, being a smaller weight class. He looked as ever bit of prime Alexander Volkanovski as he has in his whole UFC career. And Diego Lopes, I think he needs to go back a line for at least a little while. I know he's a great fighter, but it looks like Volkanovski may have his number. And unless Volkanovski loses the belt, I don't think Diego Lopes should get another title shot for a while. And then just last little kind of news and notes on that fight, just kind of something that kind of came out about it after the fight. You always looking to see if a fighter is ever trying to like make an excuse for why they lost, or not even an excuse, the reason why they lost, or maybe just didn't look as good. I guess Diego Lopes broke both of his feet in the later rounds, trying to kick, trying to do some calf kicks, and I guess they got checked by Diego Lopes the couple times that he threw it, and I guess he broke some bones or a bone in both of his feet while doing that. But I mean, throughout the fight and at the end of the fight when they're doing the announcing the winner and interviewing both fighters afterwards, couldn't tell that Diego Lopes was like limping or anything. So must not have been something with the all the adrenaline and stuff, not something he even noticed uh, until afterwards. But that's just a kind of a little nugget to sprinkle there. I can't because we had mentioned how Therese Finney looked like he fought 2 rounds with a torn Achilles, at least from what I saw. Uh, but but anyway, so that's UFC 325. Volkanovski versus Lopes 2. Let's get into just the bonuses award, and then we'll go over the fight night that's coming up Saturday. So you had so the fight of the night ended up being Alexander Volkanovski versus Lopes 2. And I mean, I guess I can agree with that because it's a championship bout and it went all 5 rounds. But I would say the best fight on the main card was probably the Benoit Saint Denis versus Dan Hooker fight. But I guess it's the fact that it only went the 4:45 mark of the second round. If that finish would have came in the third round, then I could see that fight would have been the fight of the night. But I guess I can understand it. But I think the first fight between Alexander Volkanovski and Diego Lopes was more exciting just because of, we thought that Lopes maybe had a chance to win those fights later in the rounds, the fourth and the fifth round. Like Lopes never really had a moment at all in this throughout the 5 rounds. It was just kind of like Alexander Volkanovski would land a couple shots on him, and then he would just kind of have an explosion just in response to it. But that was it. So that was the fight of the night, and so the fight of the nights, and so yeah, so these bonus awards get 100,000 now instead of 50,000, and then it's 25,000 additional for any finishes. And then performance of the night, Mauricio Ruffy got his for his TKO punch finish over Rafael Fiziev, and then Quinlan Skillkill got another extra 100,000 over his submission neck crank over Jamie Malarkey. So I can't. There's not a lot to argue there with those bonus awards. And then we have another card. Like I said, I'm kind of interested to see like what this card is like. What it's like watching a fight night on Paramount. Like, is it going to be the same amount of commercials? Are they going to cut away for walkthroughs and cornermen and all that business? So that's really my main reason for wanting to watch this UFC fight night. It's an okay card, but really it's really just like kind of like the main event and nothing. You got Mario Batista versus Vinicius Oliveira, and that's kind of there's some notable names. I'd be good. Gelton Almeida versus Rizvan Kunevs. Like I've seen some heavyweights. That's probably a fight I'd be interested in seeing, a heavyweight bout, and then obviously the main event. But yeah, I would say the prelims from UFC 324 were better than this fight card. But anyways, well, still, like I said, it's at the Meta Apex, February 7, 2026, and Enterprise, Nevada, United States. But like I said, I'm mainly interested in just seeing what are fight nights like. What are they like on Paramount now? But anyways, I think that's about all I have for you this evening. So, can I get a check, please?